Hello, everybody. Welcome, everybody. Thank you so much for being here today. We are so excited to bring this to you today. We have such a wonderful human with us today. His name is David Phillips. He is one of the smartest men I have ever had the privilege of knowing in my life. He is so well traveled. He is so educated. He is just such a beautiful soul. So I'm really, really happy that we get David today, and he's going to talk to us a little bit about, I mean, aside from what he does, professionally, just his innate instinct is to educate people and talk about his world travels that he did with his wife, and all of the good that he's done in the world. So we're so lucky and blessed to have David today. He's done short story writing, he's done long story writing, he's done travels, and he's just here to talk with us a little bit about that today. I think he's going to focus on his latest trip, and I won't take too much away from him in his introduction. So I'll let him explain what he's going to run us through today. We're so happy to have you, David. Everybody, please join me in a big warm welcome, David Phillips. Yay! Hi,
Thank
David.
you, Sarah. Thank you. That's totally over the top. I'm not anything like this. As I said to Sarah just now, I'm just an old guy trying to find his way in the world and what it's all about and that sort of stuff. And I thought a lot of the stuff that I'd been thinking about recently would really uh, touch you because I think you probably all gone through exactly the same self-questioning and so on. So I will share my screen with you now, and I put some slides together just to guide me through the talking point. So here we go on sharing my screen. I hope that everyone can see that. Uh,
We can't see if you're sharing right now, David.
I It's on sharing on my computer. You can't see it?
Nope. It's weird looking
What?
at your face.
Oh, that's terrible. Uh,
Ah, well, it's not so bad.
I went to share and no, that's not quite doing it. I'm going to try again. There's always some glitch in this technology that I thought
That's
we
it.
had it worked out. Um,
It's supposed to
okay.
make our lives easier, isn't it?
And it makes it difficult sometimes. Now I am going to click on share here and go there and say share. And
There we go.
oh, you're there. Okay.
Yes, we're there. And then just
Right.
from beginning. Ah, perfect.
Okay. Uh, as I've led an interesting life in many ways. I've traveled a lot, as Sarah said, but I've got this, as you get older, it becomes more important. You keep saying to yourself, what was it all about? What was it worth? Was it worthwhile? Uh, and how do I get some satisfaction out of life? So I'll give you a little bit of background. My wife died 2.5 years ago, and we'd been married for what was it, 68 years at the time. And so I'd never really lived on my own before. And suddenly here I am having to uh, live by myself and try and get something out of the rest of my life. And therefore, I've been asking a lot of questions of myself. And I got involved in a lot of work with seniors, and I was getting a bit annoyed because many of them do self-inflicted ageism. They play this card of, oh, I'm 75. I can't do this anymore. I can only sit in a chair and have people wait on me. And this is something that started to get on my nerves a bit because some people draw the short straw and they can't do stuff. I get that, but they can often do stuff within their limitations. But you've got to be curious, interested, and try. So I embarked on a trip. I started 2.5 months ago, and I only got back last Monday night. And therefore, it's quite fresh in my mind. So I thought that I would go back to the last bit of the trip and talk to you about that and talk a little bit of philosophy along the way of how I'm getting on. I talked. That's my quick introduction of myself. So I'm over that. I will. This is the trip that I did. I flew to Bilbao in northern Spain, as you can see at the bottom, then went across the southern Pyrenees, and then up to the north of Provence in France, back down to the south coast, then up to Paris, out to the end of Brittany, and then up to the Netherlands, Amsterdam, and from there up to across to Cologne in Germany, and then up to Denmark, across to Norway, and then flew from Bergen across to Scotland, worked my way down through Glasgow and the Lake District to the south coast, back up to Saffron Walden, and so home. And there's a reason for doing that. Because I wanted to spread the ashes of my wife, a few of them, in all her favorite places that were important to us over the last few years of our life, where we got lots of joy. And I achieved that. I think I spread them in 12 different places. So that's what was behind the route. But there were also old contacts and friends that I wanted to look up to. So I've mentioned a couple of the reasons why I did it. I was also very conscious that when you get to be 90, you haven't got that many years left. And how are you going to use them? How are you going to get satisfaction and joy from those last few years within the limitations of what you can physically do? I wanted also to find some sort of peace and purpose and create a fulfilling plan for myself for the next few years. Because I was sort of lost at first when my wife died, and you've probably all been through that. I had never really lived on my own before because we met at school and got married as soon as we could. So I had to learn to live on my own, not feel sorry for myself, and find purpose and fulfillment. And those were the four objectives. And I think that's pretty common with people of our age. We mustn't give up. We've got to wring the last joy out of life to the last moment. So this is what I set out to do. And I feel that I achieved it. I feel that at the moment, my challenge now is to hold on to the vision and develop it. So I'm going to tell you about the last week of that long journey, or the portion in Norway. So just to orient you with Norway, it's not a country. Those Scandinavian countries are not perhaps as well known as they should be, because everyone heads south to the sun, to the Mediterranean or something. And yet, because there's hardly any darkness at this time of the year in these countries. They have long summer days. It's actually in the summer, it's just beautiful up there, and not too hot as it is when you go south. So I had finished my thing in Denmark, and I was going to catch a ferry from Denmark to Norway. And the ferry goes from the tip of Denmark that you can see on the slide there. And there's one ferry that goes overnight all around the southern point of Norway and stops briefly at Stavanger and then goes on to Bergen. That's the one I wanted to catch because I would sleep overnight and then see all the islands up from Stavanger to Bergen. Well, I messed up on changing my train at a little country station, and I arrived at the dock, and the ship was still sat there on the dockside, but they said, "Oh, we raised the gangplank 10 minutes ago. You're too late. We're not putting it down again." So there I was stuck, and the ship sailed away. Then I looked up the schedule and found there was another ship that traveled, a catamaran that traveled late at night and went to Kristiansand, that you see at the bottom right of your screen. But the problem was it arrived at 1:45 a.m. in the morning, and I had no bookings. But that didn't worry me too much. I thought I'll take that. Stuff will work out. I'd rather given up by this stage booking ahead because stuff always worked out. And I never had to sleep in the street or a railway waiting room. So, and it gave me tremendous flexibility to change my plans on an instant. So that's what happened. And I arrived at 1:45 in the morning in the city of Kristiansand with nowhere to stay. And I thought, I can't possibly check into a hotel at 1:45 in the morning. That's no one's going to be even on the desk. But I walked up to town thinking I'll look for the railway station. And a man came off, was behind me, and he was a crew member of the ship. And he was finished his shift and he lived in Kristiansand. And he saw me walking ahead of him and he came and looking around and he came up to me and said, "Well, what's the problem?" And I explained to him and he said, "Oh, I know someone who's a night porter in one of the hotels. Let's find him and see if we can get you into a room." So that's what we did. He walked with me to this hotel, went in and talked to this person in Norwegian. And lo and behold, 15 minutes later, I was in a room in bed. It just worked out. And I found increasingly on this trip that don't cross your bridges before you get to them. Stuff always works out. And there is no limit to the kindness of people. Total strangers. If you're not fearful and put up a guard all the time because you've been brainwashed by bad news, 99% of people in this world are good, open-hearted. Put yourself in their hands and they will look after you or point the way
I love
for.
that, David.
Um,
Sorry.
that's okay.
I had to interject. I really love that. I love that outlook. Sorry, I had to say that.
Well, when I started on the trip, I was tending to book ahead and it locked me down. I couldn't change my ideas on an instant or because I'd really like to play Stay Another Day or something. So I rapidly gave up booking ahead and just took my chances everywhere. And it always works out. And it'll work out for you. I see people limiting their lives by being so fearful of people, fearful that they won't find a place to sleep or something. But mind you, you've got to be flexible. I was sleeping in dormitories and hostels, and so you've got to be prepared to do that sort of thing. But I always had a comfortable bed for the night. Anyway, let's move on. Uh, the next day, I now had the trip the opposite way round to the way I'd planned, so I was uh, a little bit thrown. Anyway, I caught a bus the next morning that traveled along the south coast of Norway.
David,
Uh,
I'm sorry. We're still on the Norwegian leg slide, right?
all right, I'll move on.
Oh, no,
Oh,
no, no.
yeah.
I just wanted to make sure you didn't move it because I wanted to make sure you didn't click forward because we were still looking at the Norwegian leg slide.
Oh, you want me to not go back one, eh?
Well, it's up to you. I just wanted to make sure you didn't move the slide and we weren't able to see it. So I just wanted you to know that we were still looking at the Norwegian leg slide.
Okay. Um, the I have a special relationship with Norway in some ways because my first teenage romance took place in Norway. I I was 15 at the time, and I got onto a youth exchange program. This was back in 1950. So there was a new airline starting up, Fred Olsen Airways, and he bought old Dakotas, Army surplus Dakotas, and set this up. And we went this was me joining. I think I'm on the steps there. That was us joining the Great Adventure in 1950 to fly to Oslo on a youth exchange. I was probably the youngest of the group, and it was really a life-changing experience for me. I had never had that much freedom before. And I went from a very dull, rationed Britain at the time to a society which was more open and more prosperous. So it was like an instant change. And the greatest memory, well, I was blown away by meeting this girl there, and I was so enthusiastic. When I came back, I started taking Norwegian lessons and so on, and vowed to cycle back to Norway the following year. And I did cycle back to Norway the following year. That's me on an old photograph of me cycling back to Norway in 1951. But a month before I left, I met my future wife. And with the cruelty of youth, I never even looked up Elsa, poor Elsa. Uh, I don't know how I could have done it looking back, but it I did. So that's a little bit of my background on Norway. Uh, then I went back again in 2007 in our ship, which you see on the left-hand side of the screen, and looked up. So my wife and I went, and we looked up some of those old people who were on that exchange, all in their 70s at that time. And we met them in Oslo, and they all remembered it and said what a huge thing it was. So that was part of this relationship that I have with Norway. Then in 2009, I arrived in Norway again under very different circumstances. We were crossing the North Sea from Denmark to Scotland in a storm and lost our mast, um, and then we were sent out a distress signal, and a Norwegian oceanographic research vessel found us in the middle of the night and stood by us until the Coast Guard cutter came out. That's the Coast Guard cutter on the right-hand side that towed us back into Norway. Now, that's all relevant because if we go back to here, uh, they towed us into Egersund. And if you look at the bottom of the screen, you will see Egersund partway along. It's got Kristiansand, Mandal, Lingal, Eckerfjord, Flekkerfjord, and Egersund. And we were stuck there for several weeks while the boat was repaired. And my wife and I explored all along this coast. And one of the things that I remember particularly is that we hiked out. We hiked out to a lighthouse. So I was trying to get to Egersund, and this were just shots going up this south coast from the bus. It was teeming with rain, and but it was very rugged country. It's very mountainous and all hard rock mountains. And this shot shows that much of the highway is through cuttings or goes up high in the mountains and then crosses a fjord here with an oil platform being repaired in it. Very rugged country. Anyway, I got to Egersund, and this was a place, there were only two hotels in this town of Egersund when I went online. One was rather upmarket, and the other was more reasonable. So I thought, but it showed on the web page as being full. By this time, I was getting very cavalier about always things working out. So I thought, well, I'll walk to that other hotel and they'll probably got a cancellation. My luck's always in. So I walked to the other hotel, soaking wet, teeming with rain, and found it was not full at all. It was under renovation, so it was closed. So I had no choice but to come back and blow a few nights' budget in the Grand Hotel here. That was one. I suppose that's one of the dangers of just always taking your chances. Occasionally, you're going to have to go more upmarket than you can really afford. And this was, I think, the only occasion that occurred. So I said that we had walked out to a lighthouse. And on the right-hand side of the screen, you'll see the lighthouse. In Norwegian, it's Egerøy Fyr. Fyr is the name for a lighthouse. So I wanted to get out to that lighthouse and spread some of my wife's ashes at the lighthouse. But it's quite a way. The town, the hotel I was staying is on the right-hand side there. And because all the Norwegian coast is like that with deep fjords and things, it's not always easy. But I rented an e-bike from the town, and I cycled along the blue line that you can see there. it wiggles around a bit because the road goes through a tunnel and they don't like cyclists in the tunnel. So you have to wind around the district to get around the tunnel. So if you go from right to left, I was able to cycle to a point um, just where the road narrows on the left-hand side of the screen. And the last part of that blue line was walking. Well, I say walking, but and they have developed a path along there. You're not allowed to cycle on it. It's quite rugged up and down, but it's a path until you get to on the left-hand side, you will see a little island off the island, as it were. If you go back a little bit to the right, that's as far as the path goes. And this last bit is a clambering over rocks. And it turned out to be quite tough. Here's a few pictures of that hike. This is that little arm of the water that you saw, and the path. You can just see the end of the path uh, on the left-hand side, just above the water. And from there on, you're clambering over this sort of country. When you pass through this range of rocks, that's the first view you get of the lighthouse. And then you gradually wind your way through all the rocks, a bit of a clamber, and eventually I got to the lighthouse. Uh, Quite a sense of satisfaction getting there. And I thought that that was a little bit of, what do you say, allegory for life. You do the easy bits, and then as you get older and you start to become more reflective, it sometimes gets a bit tougher. But then you decide, you work out for yourself what your target is, which is like the middle picture at the top of your screen there. The lighthouse comes into view. Then it's a bit of a tough clamber, and eventually you get there. Well, anyway, I don't want to get too philosophical, but I finally got to the base of this lighthouse and spread my wife's ashes and felt a real sense of achievement in doing that and peace. It's not been sad. The more times I've spread some of her ashes in favorite places, I say, I talk out loud, have a conversation with her and say, wasn't it a good life? Do you remember when we were here? Well, I'm back again. It's past. I'll leave a little bit of you here. And I felt an increasing sense of peace and contentment and release, as it were, from old memories that could put me in a straitjacket. So that was a progressive improvement as I went. How are we doing for time?
We're
We
doing great. We still got a half an hour, David. This is awesome.
okay.
I'm so invested.
Okay. So now I got back and I did in fact go down and find the boatyard where uh, the owners of this boatyard who repaired our boat. And it was, I thought they probably won't remember me, but I'll knock on the door and just see if they remember me. And they did. They remembered repairing our boat and my wife and I, and they said, come in. And we sat for about 2 hours with them and we talked about our lives and um, and our memories and the state of the world and our hopes and fears for the future. And this was terribly significant to me because I assumed they'd forgotten me. And that wasn't true at all. And I had to pluck up courage a bit to just go and knock on the door of the boatyard office and introduce myself. But when I took that step, they opened right up. And this was another example of the true goodness of people. Just give them a chance. Don't be fearful. Don't put up barriers. Just go for it. And it was great. Anyway, so that was my main objective in going to Norway to do that. And I thought, no, I'm going to do something for myself. I had always wanted to. Well, we sailed all up this coast in our boat years ago, and we'd gone into Bergen at the top, and there were three cruise ships in there at that time. It was stuffed with people, and we didn't stay long, and we left and sailed off to Shetland. But I had never had a chance to visit the home of Berlioz. Berlioz, the great classical composer who lived in Bergen and composed all this great music. He's a national hero in Norway because he was trying to capture the soul of Norway in his music at a time when they were um, they were wanting their independence. At that time, they were tied to Sweden. Basically, they were controlled by Sweden, and they wanted to break break out into independence, which they achieved in 1905. So he composed this music just at the moment when there was a surge in nationalism. So I wanted to go up there and visit that and see his house and listen to a concert of his music. Um, the reason originally why I was going to take that ferry from Denmark to Bergen is because it sails into Stavanger, and then we sailed in our boat throughout here through fjords and up to Bergen. And I had wanted to see all the islands and passages that we had seen before, but that was not to be. I took it the other way around. I arriving, I took the train from Ecker. How do I go back on this thing? Um, uh, how do I go backwards on this on a slideshow here?
I don't, you could try just clicking on the left-hand side.
Um, oh, yes. Okay.
There we
Um,
go.
yeah, okay. I just wanted to go back to that map there. Yeah, you can. I took the train. There's a train from Egersund to Stavanger, which I took. Um, it was interesting to me too on that little train journey because for some reason it was about 99% women passengers. I think it's because it was a Saturday morning and it stopped at all the little towns along here, and everyone was going into the big city of Stavanger to do their shopping. Now, what made it remarkable for me was that I sat there and suddenly I realized the huge volume of chatter going on around me. It was almost deafening. It was so great. I took a recording of it. But I'd always had the image that Norwegians were a bit dour and didn't smile much. But everyone was talking across three rows down to someone else or across the aisles. The level of chatter was amazing. And I thought, our images that we get of people are so wrong sometimes. They were so outgoing with each other. They probably all knew each other to a large extent, but I found that quite an eye opener. I've never traveled in a train like that before. Everyone usually sits or talks in hushed tones to the person they're with, but never some sort of community chatter. But anyway, I just dropped that out as to illustrate that I was constantly surprised. As long as you're aware and curious and aware of what's happening around you, you see all these things that break your previous image of what people are like. Anyway, we went. I then caught the bus in Stavanger. Now I thought the bus was going to go inland to try and get around all these deep fjords to get to Bergen. To my amazement, the bus started off in the opposite direction. It was going um, towards the sea and the islands. And then we plunged into one tunnel and then another tunnel and popped up onto an island, then plunged into another tunnel, popped up on the next island. It was amazing. We were island hopping through hard rock tunnels. How the country could afford it was blew my mind. There were a couple of ferry trips. If you look closely at the left-hand side of your screen, you can see a straight line across there. That was the first ferry trip. And here's a picture from it. The bus just drove onto the ferry and we were away and off. It was very efficient, actually. And then we wound around over bridges, through tunnels, and under this. On the left-hand side, you'll see a sort of dark line part way up, a third of the way up, maybe. That's quite a deep fjord. But we just plunged into a hugely deep tunnel, came up on the other side, and carried on. Tunnels through mountains. And then there was a second ferry crossing where those words are on the map, where it says Sunderland. That was a 55-minute ferry crossing up there. Then we went through a mountain. We must have been 20 kilometers in a tunnel, and there was an intersection in the middle with tunnels going off each side. The amount of money spent on building this highway is mind-blowing. And you know, the Norwegians were quite clever when oil was discovered. Oil companies discovered it, but they decided that they were going to not give it away for nothing. So they had a real confrontation with the oil companies in the really early days. And the oil companies said, well, we've discovered all this oil. If you don't take our deal, we'll walk away and you'll have nothing. And the Norwegian government said, okay, walk away. But then, of course, the oil companies came back and they got a good deal. And today they've got the largest sovereign wealth fund in the world. And they passed legislation that only a certain amount could be spent within the country and had to be spent on infrastructure. And that's why they've got magnificent roads and in a country which is probably the most difficult to build roads. So I thought that was an interesting contrast to the way Alberta did it with the oil companies. Alberta sort of caved a bit, in my opinion, and the oil companies got a very good deal for many, many years. So enough of that. Uh, Eventually, I arrived in Bergen. I didn't have any reservations, but there were several hostels in the city. Uh, and on my third try, they had room for me. So that worked out all right. Here's Bergen. It's full of traditional wooden Norwegian homes that climb up the side of a mountain. I went up to the top of the mountain and I'll just play this. At the top of the mountain, overlooking Bergen, there's two cruise ships in it now. That lake fountains in the center of the town. Um, I, and here is Grieg's house on the south side of the city. It's now more or less a sort of shrine and museum to the composer. You can go through and get a guided tour through there. But he composed much of his music down at the water's edge in the garden in this little summer house. Um, I, I was very impressed and quite moved. They have built a concert hall, but so they don't destroy the ambience of the place, they've excavated it into the side of the hill, and the front part looks out with a huge picture window behind the stage, showing that summer house in the background. So I sat and listened to a concert here for an hour that was of music that was composed in that summer house looking out over the fjord. It's quite it was well worth going to, and that really affected me to go there. And that was pretty much the end of that trip. I then flew across to Scotland from there, and that's another story. But perhaps that's a story for another day.
Oh my goodness, David, that's incredible. What
Well,
an incredible trip you made.
uh, well, that was just 1 week of it, and it went on for um, I I think it was 11 weeks. So that was just one of them. It's been life-changing for me. All those experiences, meeting older people, it, and it's really made me reassess what I'm doing in my life right now. I want to keep the vision and not let it get diluted by everyday life here. I also came very much to appreciate family. I started off by looking at things, Sarah, just traveling from one place. Oh, isn't that lovely? On to another one. And then towards the end of the time, you get sort of OD'd on looking at stuff. And you realize that the only thing that matters are the human interactions that are associated with those places. Otherwise, you might just as well watch them on the big screen at home because you probably get a better picture. Um, I started to really value human relations. And then I got a bit introspective about my family and how the only thing that matters, everything else is irrelevant, but the love of family and the interaction with them. Doesn't have to be family, it can be um, anyone you've contacted, as long as you've got in an open, free exchange and relationship with them. It is all that counts in this life. So when towards the end of this trip, I even skipped a few places that I thought that I wanted to go to because I thought I don't want to just see another place unless it's got some connection through my history or people I've met, then I'm not going to bother with it. And I came back, and at the end, I said, so what really matters is the people who love you, and nothing else in this world matters compared with them.
I love that. That's such a good perspective because I think that, but I've like barely been out of Northwest Boness, Calgary. And so it's so nice you've traveled all over the world and you spent months at a time in places. And that's what, after all your years and all your travels and all your education, that's what it is at the end of the road, right? It's family
Yeah,
and love.
yeah, and I do think that you only get out of life what you put into it. So if you've got to make the effort, you've got to go outside your comfort zone. You've got to keep pushing yourself. It's so easy to be lazy and sit back and say, "Oh, I can't be bothered. Oh, I'm too tired." Or I know all about that. I'm not a spring chicken, but you've got to keep pushing right to the end. A lot of people said to me, "Oh, aren't you worried? What if you're sick? What if this? What if the other?" And I said, "If I drop dead on that trip, I'll die happy. And that's how I'm going." Um, but people put so many barriers up and fears, and because there's money to be made out of people's fear, I think. Buy
Mm.
insurance for this and insurance for that. And um, the what I have to say is that medical things as you get older are always important. And I didn't have any medical insurance whatsoever, apart from the my Canadian coverage. And I have had experience in the past of having to go in past years, having to go in hospital in Europe, different countries in Europe, and it has always been superb service, most cases better than I would have got in Canada. And the cost is lower than it would have been in Canada. Now, my understanding, and I'm not sure about this, is that if you have to pay medical expenses when you're on holiday in another country, Alberta Health Services will pay what it would have cost in Alberta if you'd been here. Now, in Europe, that is almost certainly less than it would have cost in Alberta. The United States is quite different, of course. It could be enormous.
Do you worry, David, that the care is the same? Because it's like when, we have like registered nurses from like say the Philippines, and when they come to Canada, they're not registered nurses here until they challenge the exam and stuff. So like, and to my knowledge, it's because the education systems are different as well. So do you ever worry about that when you're in Europe and you have to go to the
No,
hospital?
I never do. The I've never worried about that, and I've always got superb service. It was not only me, my wife. My wife ended up in hospital in Germany and in France, and the Netherlands, and she got superb service in every location. Um, more so than we could have, that I felt that you would get here. There were no wait times ever. It was always straight in, and uh, prescriptions were all free.
Wow.
Um, but I see people, but people get wow. Now that's not so about every country. Now, if I was in Asia, I don't. Some of the countries in Asia, I would be quite a different thing, um, and South America. I Mexican Mexico was pretty good. On one occasion, when I was sick in Mexico, that was I got good service. But whether that was because I had relations who were um, in the right social circles, I'm not sure. Um, so people, well, Sarah, I find, I do all this stuff and lots of times when I'm going to go, people say, "Oh, I wish I could do it, but I can't." Then they'll have a whole list of reasons why they can't do it. And most of those things are excuses because they're scared of getting out of their comfort zone, scared of what if this or what if that happened. And my feeling is just go for it. And it will all work out because people are 99% of the time just human beings. And if you connect with them on a heart to heart basis and are open, they will respond in the same way. Um, I, I've I've got an increasing faith in the goodness of human beings if we can just not get our outlook distorted by the news we hear and the people who want to exploit those fears for profit.
I love that, David. You've said that a couple of times, and I think that's so wonderful because I think the longer that we live, the more cynical we can become, right?
And
Yeah, and it's just so good, such a fresh outlook from someone, 90 years old. And this is your outlook. I love that. Just trust people and trust in the good. And I think that you are an inspiration, David.
well, thank you. I'm not trying to be an inspiration. I'm just trying to find my way. And I really feel now that after all these years, it's sort of falling into place. I see the pattern. I see how I fit in the scheme of things. I see what's rubbish and what to avoid. And I certainly don't listen to the news hardly at all, but I make sure I keep myself up to date with the essentials so I know what's going on in the world. But I am not um, I find that you sort of get brainwashed if you get too much into that sort of stuff, or you become addicted to social media. So I've largely cut out social media. I don't listen to the news that much. I make my own decisions and my own value judgments based on my experience, and it's really working out for me. I what more can I say? I just feel that why did it take me so long? If only I could have 30 years ago be where I am now. It would have been so much, I could have got so much more out of life, but it's a learning process.
You know
We
what?
are.
And I feel like you're grateful regardless. And I was going to ask you, like, just to kind of end this off. And I mean, if anybody out there has anything they want to put in the chat box, whether it's a little comment or a question or something, you go ahead. But while that's happening, I just want to say thank you so much, David. And if you could give one piece of advice to like the younger generation or anybody out there that thinks, I'm 80 and I kind of wanted to go on a cruise my whole life and never got to. just bite the bullet. What's the advice that you would give to somebody kind of with those more negative thoughts and oh, I can't do it and I can't this and that.
Uh, you can. You can if you want to enough. It's you can achieve anything in this world if you want to enough, I think, as long as it's reasonable, of course. I don't have much money. That's why I had to sleep in hostel and dormitory accommodation, be prepared to sleep in a waiting room in a station if necessary, but I never had to do that. But have faith in human nature. Assume everyone's good, and you can do it. There's always cheap ways of doing things. You don't have to be a millionaire, but that depends. If you want the luxury of some large cruise, then yes, you're going to have a problem because you you can't choose who you mix with to a large extent on these large cruise ships. Many people go on cruises because they feel that, oh, it's safe. It's all looked after. I don't have to think about anything. That's a danger. If you don't have to think about anything, you don't have to take any chances. You even got your company that you mix with sort of worked out because they could all afford the cruise. It's you're not going to get much from it. You want to just do it yourself.
And you know what, David? I we did have someone type in the chat box there, and I apologize if I'm butchering your name, but I believe it's Hafeza. And they typed in, I have loved listening to you, David. I am living with a paralysis. I recently went paragliding with the winds in India. Thank you for your
Ooh,
story and for your inspiration for another adventure.
that's very nice. Thank you, Baz.
I love that. Yes. And that's right there as well, just in that one note. Like, yes, if you want to enough, you can. No matter your age, no matter your, circumstances, you can. If you want to enough, you can. I think if we're taking anything away from this presentation today, I think that's it. So, you guys, this has been so amazing. It makes me feel like I can conquer the rest of my day, and it's Monday.
Well, it was a pleasure joining you, Sarah. I enjoyed it. And if I've been of any help to anyone, then that's made my day too.
Oh, thank you so much, David. Thank you, everybody, for coming and watching and listening to us. I'm going to keep chatting with David and see what other stories he's got. Remember, he said he's got lots of stories for us. So we will be back with David if I can get him invested again. And David, we just got asked if there's a way that we can contact you.
I'm I'm quite happy to share my email with anyone. You
Okay.
have it, Sarah. If you want to put it up in the chat, I'm quite happy to correspond with anyone who found it interesting.
Excellent. Thank you so much, David. I do have David's email. So anybody who would like David's email, if you could please reach out to me. I'm Sarah C at unisonalberta.com. You can also, if you signed up and registered for this through Eventbrite, you can find my email in that as well. So if all else fails, call the Kirby Center. I am the manager of the Adult Day program. Ask for Sarah, and I'm happy to share David's email with his permission. So, thank you so much again, David. You're so amazing. And yes, I'm going to put my email in the chat. .com. There we go. I just want to make sure I spelled everything correctly. There we go. That is my email. So Sarah C at unisonalberta.com. So, like I said, please feel free to jot that down and reach out to me, and I can put you in touch with David. And no bad spellings. She said, he said, thank you so much. My bad spellings, LOL. No bad spellings at all. Um, Thank you guys so much. And again, David, you're the best. I can't wait till the next time. And we will see you all again, hopefully very soon, with a new adventure with David. Thank you, David. Bye,
Bye.
everyone.